At exactly 8 a.m., on a blindingly bright morning along the desolate border, the desert floor began to tremble. 72 armored vehicles, mobilized under the direct orders of IRGC General Pakpour, surged forward in a cloud of choking dust, their tracks grinding against the hard-packed earth. This was not a subtle maneuver. It was a mechanical sledgehammer aimed squarely at a predetermined U.S. Army patrol route. The roar of 72 diesel engines created a wall of sound designed to terrify, to overwhelm, and to force a hasty American retreat. Pakpour believed he was executing a masterclass in intimidation, creating a steel blockade that would humiliate the superpower on live video. But he was fundamentally mistaken. He wasn't surrounding the Americans. He was driving 72 metal coffins into a pre-registered kill box. The U.S. commanders weren't scrambling for their radios in panic. They had been watching the heat signatures of those engines warm up on thermal satellite imagery for the last 40 minutes. The unit standing in Pakpour's way was not a collection of frightened conscripts and soft-skinned trucks. It was the tip of the spear of an Armored Brigade Combat Team, anchored by the M1A2 SEPv3 Abrams. This beast doesn't just dominate the battlefield, it owns the physics of it. Weighing in at nearly 74 tons, powered by a whisper-quiet gas turbine engine and protected by classified layers of depleted uranium armor, the SEPv3 is the most lethal land warfare system in human history. Pakpour's 72 vehicles represented a significant logistical effort for the IRGC, a mass gathering of steel and diesel. To the American tank commanders, they represented nothing more than a target-rich environment. The Abrams fire control system computes wind speed, humidity, barrel droop, and target movement instantaneously, allowing it to put a 120mm sabot round through a window from 2 miles away while moving at full speed. The general was betting on quantity. He was about to learn that in the face of this level of technological supremacy, 72 targets just means the American gunners don't have to aim very hard. The ambush died the moment the first Iranian engine turned over. Long before the dust cloud became visible to the naked eye, the Long-Range Advanced Scout Surveillance System, or LRAS-3, had already dissected the formation. This isn't just a pair of high-powered binoculars. It is a multispectral sensor suite that turns the darkest night and the thickest haze into high-definition video. Sitting silently on the ridges, American scouts were using third-generation thermal optics to count the lug nuts on the lead vehicle's wheels from 10 kilometers out. Overhead, an MQ-1C Gray Eagle loitered invisibly at 25,000 feet, streaming real-time feeds directly to the Tactical Operations Center. The sensor operators weren't just seeing vehicles. They were cataloging threats. They identified the make and model of every transport, spotted the caliber of the mounted machine guns, and determined which vehicles were carrying command staff based on their antenna configurations. Pakpour thought he was bringing the element of surprise. In reality, he was broadcasting his position on every electromagnetic frequency that matters. The American network didn't just see the blockage forming. They knew the name of the officer leading it before he even put on his helmet. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, the atmosphere shifted from routine monitoring to surgical focus. There was no shouting, no cinematic drama, just the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic click of trackballs. Under the glow of blue light displays, intelligence analysts fused the incoming data into a single, comprehensive digital mosaic. A sergeant calmly tagged the lead vehicles as primary threats. A battle captain verified the rules of engagement. Within seconds, the location and vector of every single Iranian vehicle were distributed across the entire brigade network. The data didn't just stay in the command tent. It was data linked directly to the fire control computers of the frontline units. Every gunner in every Abrams tank sat watching a screen that told them exactly where to point their barrels. To Pakpour's drivers, the desert looked empty. To the American network, the battle space was already gridlocked with firing solutions. It was a bureaucratic dismantling of a military threat, processed with the same emotional detachment as filing a tax return. Plenty of time to finish a cup of coffee before deciding the fate of 72 armored vehicles. 8:05 a.m. The order to halt echoed through the Iranian radios. 72 vehicles slammed on their brakes, drifting into a jagged line across the transit route. They parked broadside, creating a deliberate steel barricade meant to force a confrontation. General Pakpour's strategy was visual noise, occupy the space, create a spectacle, and dare the Americans to push through. Across the tarmac, the U.S. column came to a controlled stop. There were no aggressive honking horns, no frantic shouting of orders. The lead Abrams simply idled, its turbine emitting a high-pitched whine that cut through the low rumble of the diesel engines opposite them. The American commanders understood exactly what this was. It wasn't a battle line, it was a stage play. And they refused to take the bait. 8:20 a.m. The theatrics began in earnest. Realizing the Americans weren't backing down, the IRGC drivers escalated. Engines were revved to the red line, spewing thick black smoke into the air to obscure visibility. Several armored personnel carriers lurched forward in jerky, aggressive movements, feinting charges before slamming to a halt. It was a classic gray zone tactic. Be annoying enough to provoke a mistake, but not lethal enough to justify a war. Inside the Abrams turrets, the crews remained statuesque. They watched the display through the commander's independent thermal viewer, which stripped away the smoke and dust, revealing the heat signatures of the drivers perfectly. The gunners didn't lock on, that would be an act of war, but they kept their reticles hovering just inches off the leading vehicles. The discipline was absolute. They were waiting for a single specific trigger, a red line that, if crossed, would turn this blockade into a scrap metal yard. 8:45 a.m. The tipping point arrived. One Iranian light armored vehicle broke formation, accelerating aggressively toward the American flank, closing the distance to under 50 meters. It was a test of nerve. The response was immediate and mechanical. The turret of the lead Abrams didn't swing wildly. It rotated with terrifying smoothness, the hydraulic whine audible even over the idling engines. The 120mm smoothbore cannon lowered slightly, and the coaxial machine gun aligned directly with the driver's viewport. It wasn't a shot fired, but it was the loudest sound on the battlefield. The Iranian driver slammed on his brakes, kicking up a spray of gravel. He stared down the barrel of a weapon designed to penetrate 2 feet of reinforced steel and realized he had pushed his luck exactly 1 inch too far. For 10 agonizing seconds, nobody breathed. Then, slowly, the Iranian vehicle reversed. The line held. The Americans hadn't moved a muscle, yet they had pushed back the entire assault with a simple, silent adjustment of a hydraulic turret. At 9:15 a.m., the standoff ended not with a bang, but with a cloud of exhaust. Realizing that the American column was neither going to retreat nor engage in their theatrical provocation, General Pakpour's forces made the only move left available to them. They gave up. One by one, the 72 armored vehicles executed clumsy three-point turns, their tracks chewing up the asphalt as they reassembled into a retreat formation. There was no victory lap, no triumphant radio broadcast, just the awkward reality of a blockade that failed to block anything. To the untrained eye, it looked like a draw. To the intelligence officers in the American TOC, it was a gold mine. For the entire duration of the hour-long encounter, the U.S. Army hadn't just been sitting there, they had been recording. Every radio transmission between the Iranian commanders, every radar frequency used by their scout vehicles, and every shift in their tactical formation had been captured, digitized, and stored. The electronic warfare suites had built a complete electronic order of battle for the IRGC's armored divisions. Pakpour thought he was flexing his muscles. In reality, he was voluntarily handing over his unit's digital fingerprints. The Americans didn't need to fire a shot to win. They just needed to wait, watch, and let the enemy reveal exactly how they operate under pressure. The cost-benefit analysis of this morning reads like a strategic bankruptcy for General Pakpour. Running 72 heavy armored vehicles in a combat environment is not cheap. Between the thousands of gallons of diesel burned, the maintenance hours accrued on aging tracks, and the logistical strain of rapid deployment, the IRGC spent a small fortune just to stage a glorified parking violation. But the financial cost pales in comparison to the intelligence loss. They broadcasted their command hierarchy, their communication encryption standards, and their reaction times to the world's most sophisticated listening ears. And what did they buy with that expense? Absolutely nothing. 0 yards of territory gained, 0 political concessions extracted, 0 change in American patrol schedules. The U.S. Army didn't even file a combat report. They likely logged it as a minor traffic delay. Pakpour invested a fortune in a show of force, and his return on investment was absolute zero. Within 48 hours, the media narrative began to spin out of Tehran. Iranian state television released carefully edited footage of the encounter, scored with dramatic martial music and overlaid with slow-motion effects. The headlines screamed victory, claiming that General Pakpour's brave armored division had forced the Great Satan to freeze in its tracks, proving that Iranian resolve could halt American imperialism. It was a perfect story for domestic consumption, designed to boost morale and project strength. But the data tells the truth that propaganda tries to hide. The U.S. patrol logs didn't record a battle space engagement or a tactical standoff. They recorded a Class 3 route obstruction, the military equivalent of a traffic jam caused by bad drivers. The American column didn't retreat. They simply waited for the road to clear, just as they would for a herd of livestock crossing the street. The juxtaposition was almost comical. On one side, you had a general declaring a strategic victory against a superpower. On the other side, you had an American lieutenant complaining that the delay made him late for the chow hall. This is the essence of the disconnect. Iran saw a battle for the soul of the Middle East. The U.S. Army saw a minor inconvenience on a Tuesday morning. The entire episode serves as a textbook example of modern asymmetric warfare, where a regional power attempts to use proximity and volume to negate the technological superiority of a global superpower. It failed because the U.S. Army refused to play by the rules of the aggressor. By maintaining absolute fire discipline and withholding kinetic engagement, the Americans denied General Pakpour the one thing he desperately needed: footage of an American tank firing first. Without that visual evidence of aggression, he was just a man with too much heavy equipment causing a traffic jam. This is the new reality of battlefield dominance in the 21st century. It isn't always about who has the bigger gun or who fires the most rounds. Sometimes, true dominance is demonstrated by the capability to destroy your enemy instantly, combined with the discipline to choose not to. Pakpour wanted to provoke a messy, chaotic fight to legitimize his narrative of resistance. Instead, he was met with the cold, bored stare of a force that simply didn't consider him a threat worth engaging. He came looking for a war. He found only a mirror reflecting his own irrelevance. The desert is quiet again, the tracks have been swept away by the wind, and the patrol routes continue on schedule as if nothing happened. General Pakpour learned a harsh truth that day. You can order 72 vehicles to block the road, but you cannot block the reality of the power gap. Some lessons are taught with explosions and twisted metal. This one was taught with silence and indifference. And for a general looking for glory, being ignored is a fate far worse than being defeated. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe and share this video to support more untold stories of modern military operations.